Let me get this rolling. Notice of special meeting, Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District, July 19, 2022. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Directors of the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation of the County of Jefferson, State of Colorado will hold a special meeting at 6 p.m. Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 13919 West Utah Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado 80228. This meeting will be held for the purpose of conducting such business as may come before the board. This meeting is open to the public. Virtual meeting option for those who may not be able to attend in person. The district will offer the option of participating in this meeting by video / conference call. To attend, please go to https://us06web.zoom.us/j/895-3322-5776 or call 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting ID 895-3322-5776. To troubleshoot issues with the connection at the time of the meeting, please follow the link https://support.zoom.us/HC/EN-US//sections//200305593-troubleshoot. If you still experience issues, email customerservice@greenmountainwater.org and our AT staff will assist you as soon as possible. The district does not discriminate on the basis of race, age, national origin, color, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or disability in the provision of services. People with disabilities needing reasonable accommodation to attend or participate in a district board meeting can call 303-985-1581 or email customerservice@greenmountainwater.org for assistance. Please give notice as far in advance as possible so we can accommodate your request. Agenda item number 1 is called the order declaration of a quorum. Jeff Baker present.
Roger Wendell present.
Dave Wickman.
Karen Morgan.
All 5 directors are present. I declare a quorum. We'll close agenda item 1, move into agenda item number 2, directors matters, disclosure matters. Anything the directors need to disclose? No items. We will close agenda item number 2 and move into agenda item number 3, approval of additions to deletions from the agenda. There are none. I will close out agenda item number 3. We will move into agenda item number 4, public comment, limit 5 minutes per person. For past motion of the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District Board of Directors, May 11, 2021. Members of the public wishing to address the board during the public comment period are asked to keep their comments civil and related to the items in the agenda or to the conduct of the district business. Members of the public wishing to address the board will be recognized by the board to maintain proper decorum. Since Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District Board values your input, we always offer additional opportunities for the public to provide comments by using the district's email system or by phoning into customer service in the event they do not get on during the meeting during the period set aside for public comment. There's no one in the room. We have nobody online. I will close public comment and I believe we will now wait for the presentation. Agenda item number 5, presentation of questions with the human resource providers. So we're waiting for Paychex, I believe.
Yeah, so I talked to Paychex Direct, and they presently handle our, payroll, and they do provide us with compliance with our employee handbook and our posters that are for laborers. But they didn't have much input on the performance reviews, and that's why I gave everybody a copy of the existing annual review. This is the latest and greatest one that was used at the end of 2021 for all employees. So every employee at Green Mountain Water received filled out review, signed, and they score. And then we're going to tie in on the last page. You'll see the mission, vision, values, and goals. We're going to start tying that in directly to these performance reviews. So we can improve our mission, vision, values, and goals directly tied into that. And and then depending on HR consulting, what we can use for them. And then also, this is February of this year. This is the actual survey that was filled out by the district manager in February of the employee council survey that lists everything. I can just pass it around. There's a lot of information in here. So that's our existing state. And I know I apologize, but I was thinking that directors would set up the meetings with the employee council and the other consulting company. So I just talked to Paychecks. That was it.
Okay, so we don't have anybody else been scheduled for tonight. Okay, so.
But we could talk, but we do have a lot of information on the employee council survey because we take it every year. So that's the latest one there. We could talk about that. And I can also print out, there's a spreadsheet from the end of last year that lists every employee in the percent of their pay scale they're at based on these surveys. So I just reviewed every employee, and they're somewhere between, depending on years of service, somewhere between 30 to 70% in those pay scales. So on those spreadsheets.
What's the source of this?
This one's the employee council, the same one you talked to, the same HR people you talked to that we fill out. Okay. So it's the same survey that they send us an email, and they give us the statistics too based on, they're looking at fire departments, police departments, libraries, all those also. And so they do have, we do have past documents that show levels of our field techs and what levels they are in based on the surveys that are filled out specific to water and wastewater. So we do have all these tools in place, and we are, tying in the annual reviews with the mission, vision, values, and goals.
So any comments?
I haven't seen this yet, of course, but I don't know if it's something we want to continue with. I was under the impression we'd be listening to presentations this evening. And if I had a responsibility to contact these people, I apologize. I didn't realize that. But I don't know how familiar the other directors are with the current system. Apparently it's not adequate. That's the reason why we're here tonight.
Well, probably I'm going to let Karen, because I talked to Karen a little bit about this earlier. So there used to be, I guess, a system when Dave Arkoff was manager, and then there was, and Sam, maybe you've been here. Is it okay to talk to you?
Yeah.
So we went from Dave and whatever that looked like, and then we moved into something else. And I think there was a couple of iterations.
Yeah, so we've got cutbacks all over the place. Dave's was a interview review, pretty minimal. And once we started working with Nina, she cleaned stuff up. We started doing quarterly reviews. Nina left. There was that long period of time where we didn't have a district manager. So employees were kind of doing their own quarterly reviews that had been set up with Nina at that point, but I don't think there was much oversight over it, so it fell apart. Kristen started, we adopted this review system, and that's what we've used since that point.
Is this quarterly?
So it's fluctuated. Originally, we started doing this one quarterly, and then that changed to yearly. 2021, we only did.
And I think it would be hard to do employee reviews quarterly.
Yeah, just me. I was a technician for part of my career. Quarterly would have been disruptive in the work I was doing.
But I think
maybe twice a year or something.
I think that's kind of what Austin expressed, is that it was with the field staff, it was more.
Okay, so do you have anything to add on that?
I think we were talking, the discussion was about raises specifically, and I don't know what the system was. All I know is that you could see when Mr. Tice passed around the last 5 years of salaries and benefits, that they used to be individually tailored to the employee. Did you see that? And each person got, it was like from a 0.2 to a 1.7. It was rare to go above 2, I think, % raise. But everybody looked pretty individual. I don't know what went into that, but that was one method for how they did. And then when he left, all of a sudden that stopped, and they did, and across the board, everybody got like cost of living at 2.5, and then 3 and 3.5. So it's been like that cost of living. It's always that will always go up. I'm sure everything, cost of living always goes up, but it looks like that was a cost of living switch over to whatever that was before, that was individually tailored to the employee. I don't know anything about that system.
Do we normally try to provide cost of living every year based on CPI or something? Is that normal procedure?
Since I've been here, that's what we kind of have been working towards. But
So if even the poorest performing employees would be entitled to this cost of living increase.
right.
So
And that's a problem. That in
I
theory,
don't
that
want
could
to
be a
punish
problem.
anybody, but just curious.
Well, it's not punishment. You know, if you're not working well, look, this is always a tough conversation,
Right.
and this is the stuff I manage people. This is, I think, what I think is missing, because this stuff seems to come up every year, and there seems to be a gap. And to what Sam's saying, it's like it's kind of been all over the boards, and I don't think that's good for the directors who have a fiduciary responsibility with what we're having to approve annually. I don't think it's fair to the employees, because they don't. If you're all over the boards, I don't know how they work to something, right? There should be targets and stuff. So I would share with you guys what we did in my past life, or how things work. There was always a budget set aside that would go to the manager, and that's the stuff we really shouldn't be at this level. There's a line here that really shouldn't be. We shouldn't be in their role, and vice versa.
Well, we can be if necessary, but this is,
I agree, but this is operational, tactical level, right? So we're supposed to be strategic. So there's questions I've always had, like, do we have, first off, in the budget, we set aside X amount of dollars for the district staff budget, and then do we have the job descriptions for each employee?
Yes, we have job descriptions for each employee.
Do we have a starting salary and a top out salary? There should be a min-max.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have that, and we do have how they can move up based on certifications like distribution collection and CDL also.
move up within their pay band?
Yeah, move up with their pay band. So if they get a CDL, they move up in their pay band.
Okay.
So there are specific pay bands for the types of duties, technician.
Yes.
Okay.
And so to answer your point, Roger, that, say you have somebody that's just, they're showing up. I mean, they're doing okay. That's what we get paid for, right? We're supposed to do a good job. That's why we exchange time for money and talent. But if you have somebody that's just, clicking along, they're no more, no less, and then you have somebody that's performing high, that's where I think where Dave Harkoff, or what we did, maybe they only got a 1.5%. And then you have a higher performer, rather than go through this gymnastics we just went through, and I'll get to that here in a second. You could take the percentage of that and move that over to a higher performer for their increase. And I believe that's how you pay for performance, right? I mean, that's where.
Yeah, so everywhere I work, that's exactly how.
So what you're saying is you have a pool of money.
Tool that we authorize. This is on our level. It's like, here's your annual 2022 budget, and this is the system set up that the manager. This is where we don't get into the weeds and shouldn't be in the weeds. But when we had, and I think Jeff would really started a lot of this, and it really wasn't so much you, but I think when Kristen, we had what was it, 4 basically looked like promotional levels of people becoming managers, and we have then you get into the scale of what a manager does. Typically, a manager is going to manage around 20 some people on it. How many people do you manage?
It varied between 25 and 300.
Yeah, so I had, you know, somewhere around 22 to 25 people, and I had contractors, you know, on top of that. So that's what I consider that manager level. That's the people that deserve manager pay, because you're on call all the time, you're responsible for your entire staff, etc. Now, it seemed like we were creating, and I kept hearing that these people needed their managers in their each section in a small, you know, district. I say small district, but small amount of people under them. So that changes, and I think I've talked with Todd about that, because Todd's the CFO in an architectural firm, and you know, there should be all those kind of factors should weight or be weighted, you know, in those performance evaluations. Like, you know, how was your performance? The mission, you know, the mission statement's good, but you know, for each individual, like Todd should be doing this year. This should be his goals. And Karen, you have these goals for this year, and Dave, and Roger, and Jeff. We each should have individual goals. That's the minimum. That just gets you on the poker table, right? And then how well did you do that? And then what's above it? That way the employee knows what's above and beyond. And if they're doing that, then you know, those are the discriminators for advancing the different percentages in there, one way or shifting them up or down.
And it's usually, you know, when you talk to all these HR organizations, they all have usually a score of 1 through 5. So, you know, 5 being outstanding and 1 being not making it to the poker table. So,
yeah, and if you're not performing, then you could be on a performance review, you know, where Jeff would have to set that up. That's just hypothetical. You have somebody struggling or something's happened, and you know, they have a window of opportunity to correct their behaviors, you know, and then it's reassessed by the manager. That's at the manager level. That's not our role.
Something I mentioned to Mr. Tyus when I met him in May was, I said, you know, you're the manager, and I hope you handle all those managerial duties. And what I was implying was that I realize he's new to this particular position, but we should probably put our faith and confidence in him, let him do this, and then reevaluate it at some reasonable time, maybe at the start of the calendar years, and have him present to us, what are people making, who got raises, why did they get the raises, trust his judgment on how this industry operates and the wage scale that we can afford to pay to be somewhat competitive, and just let him run with it and follow up maybe in January or February and see how it goes.
The problem is it jumped up in the director's world. How many times did we have to, we were engaged in this, and that's where, you know, personally, I'm like, it's uncomfortable having that kind of a discussion like this, because it always is, no matter what. That was one of the things I always hated the most was, you know, having to evaluate employees and stuff. You know, they were always like family.
Yeah.
35 years I spent with those folks, you know, but how do you tell somebody, it's like, yeah, you know, it's tough. You need to take up the slack, or this other one's still doing an amazing job. They're always covering for everybody. I need to recognize them, you know, and that's just the work. That's how it's supposed to work.
Sure.
So I think it's just, I was caught off guard when we had these, it sounded like things were, and it's not on you, because he came on board right after we had this discussion back in January. I think Kristen kind of dropped that on us. And, you know, it's just seemed like I didn't really understand how we got there. I mean, I wasn't comfortable with how she described it. And I'm like, well, what is our process?
and I'm very accustomed to, because I've been doing it for 20 years, is building performance reviews with the help of HR consulting. And keep in mind, the goals, even though the goals are on this, aren't going to match the exact goal under mission, vision, and values, it's going to build up to that. For example, if our goal is to invest in, you know, wastewater infrastructure, so we meet capacity, it's going to be specific to that person's task. So if it's a field person, it's going to be specific to what that person does day to day to meet that goal. For example, you know, they work with, you know, computer modeling and engineering, or actually going out and inspecting systems. So, and like you said, they're given that score just to be able to fulfill their job description. So, and traditionally we've always done this is give them an updated job description along with the performance review. You know, at the end of the year, a yearly one that's solid, saying, okay, so, you know, Arapahoe County Water, the board would approve X amount average percent of dollars, just like Director Baker said, and then we would do the performance reviews where high performers would get so much and lower performers would get so much based on that amount of money. So we're within budget. And then they would see that based on exact examples of what they do day to day and how that fulfills mission, vision, values, and goals, and also how it fulfills their actual job description too. So it overlaps with their job description, their goals, and if they're doing something exceptional, so they get a higher score since it's a score rating. That way, if the board asks, well, what specifically did this person do to get a 5, we could address that.
This just sounds typical and reasonable to me. Maybe it's not rolling out that way.
We weren't hearing that.
Oh, okay.
And that's what was missing. And then I think there's another component here that, so you're talking about the performance thing, but I think we need to have, or in your budget or whatever, where, rather than like you do a bonus for somebody. Say you're doing like this amazing, job or something like that. We should call them spot cash rewards, or it'd be a bonus. It's a one-time
cash awards,
something like that. And that's another way, you need to be able to do that. It may not, maybe, like I said, we would top out on how much, depending on, we'd call them high pots. You may only have one high pot out of it, a group of managers, maybe 20, 25 managers. One of them's a high pot and they get a 68% raise, right? I mean, I had one year where I was a high pot, I got a 1.5% raise. And it's because they had this algorithm type thing where they called it a comp ratio based on my starting pay and the top of scale. It was like comp ratio is a fancy word to say you're not getting yeah, great job. Thanks for being a high performer, but you're only getting 1.5% this year. Yeah. And so I never understood that one. And I never will.
Well, yeah, in the water and wastewater distribution collection system, some technicians that have been in the field for a very long period are at the top of their banded pay scale. So they cannot move up in hourly pay. So usually they might just get a lump sum. It's like because they can't, because the pay scale is locked. And then it takes the board of directors to say, hey, we have to move that scale.
But like, are the upper, I guess for me, I mean, the lower limits are easy. Are the upper limits like crazy high, or are they reasonably high?
The upper limits for field right now is just around $31 an hour. So
that's not unreasonably high.
No.
Yeah, it matches about the size of the district. And we're watching to see, what the districts, if they move up next year, see what happens if they move pay, if they actually move the bands, because a lot of water and wastewater systems haven't really moved this band.
Well, I think one of my struggles with the stuff that Kristen did was I felt like she used Denver Water as a base, and you have a place that has thousands of employees who make huge money. And then she was saying, well, we need that here. And the reality is, I can tell you, that's probably not realistic. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
definitely not. So like if they have a technician that can make, I'll just make this up, 120 grand a year, I don't think we're going to have technicians making 120 grand a year.
No, absolutely.
Well, there's the other thing too, where, and I don't, HR was always kind of an evil thing for me. But you would have a high and you would have the lowest, and then you'd have somewhere in the mid-range, right? You want to always be somewhere in the middle of that. That's what they typically shot for, so to Director Hooks' thing, if you're just going off of Denver Water and they're like the gold standard, that's probably not good. You don't want to be whoever's like bottom of the barrel, because we won't have a staff, I mean, that's just common sense. So I think it's just trying to a level of educating the board on some of the stuff, that how it's done, so we're not, I felt very uncomfortable approving stuff based on not knowing anything. And I can't see, that's the problem. That was the problem. If we don't know and we're voting on this stuff, we could be in a lot of trouble. because that's our fiduciary responsibility. You just can't, you shouldn't do that. You know, you better understand what you're doing, because we're spending taxpayer dollars, you know, we represent the taxpayers. So at the same token, we have to be on balance, and we want the staff to be taken care of, and, you know, we want a healthy water and sanitation district. So it's a fine line. It's tough conversations.
It appears that Metro and Denver Water, their distribution, you know, water distribution for Denver is going up, is right now about $38 an hour. On Metro is about 38. So if we're topping out at 31, we're probably within the bands. And if it goes up, if we did do a proposal come this fall, we'd give you documentation to show, okay, the larger water districts are at these bands, the smaller water districts than us are at these bands, and we're at this band, so you could vote on it.
Yeah, I'm more, I guess, reasonableness is more my benchmark. It's, you know, I certainly don't, it's like, if IT is worth X, I don't want to pay them X minus 20.
No.
On the other hand, if IT is worth X, I don't want to pay them X plus 20.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Only because to me, and this is probably my own personal struggle, and I think I said this in the other meeting, you know, government initially, a lot of everything that were set up to pay less and give way better benefits. Well, then they came up with this great idea for themselves that they should match their wages to people in industry. Super, like I said. So they match them, but when industry wages plummeted, like in the early 2000s, did the government wages? No, they only had upward provisions. They had no downward provisions. And so all of a sudden you had government workers that were unskilled workers making, like if you go down, I can just tell you this, I know people who work for the city of Denver who make far beyond any skill level they have. And I'm not saying that we necessarily have that here, but that honestly concerns me that there's no reality check to what happens, that it's only up and away. And so, like, for example, I knew a guy in the building department in Denver who literally all he did was approve plans. And by the time he retired, Bob probably made $150,000 a year, and he was probably in a $70,000 position. But he had been there so long, it was just crazy what he was paid.
Right.
And then they get pensions on that.
Yeah, that's the thing, like with the scale, like,
Yes.
you know, if you had, you know, if we're looking at similar water and sanitation districts that have staff like we are, that's kind of the world we need to be looking at, right?
Yes.
Because if you're talking about contractors that work for water and sanitation, they're going to get more. I mean,
Yes.
you know, that's just the way that goes, but they don't have benefits, and they don't get to roll into a place, right? You know, they're not working in the same place every day. They're all over the place, you know. That's the trade-off for, you know, and I used to have to tell my guys that, they're like, well, I can make $4, $5, $6 more an hour. And I'm like, well, you're going to also be not coming to the same place. You're not going to have a guaranteed 40 hours. And when they tell you you're working overtime, it's not like the option where you get to go home like, no, I don't want it. You're just going to do it.
Yes.
And if there's no work tomorrow, you're not getting paid for that either. We'll just tell you don't show up. And that doesn't happen, didn't happen where I work. That doesn't happen here. So that's part of the trade-off. You have a stable
work environment,
right? So we just need to be on balance with that.
I agree.
Stuff.
So Manager Tice, do your employees realize that it's kind of structured this way? We're kind of mid-level as far as pay and the size of the organization, or are they looking to you and saying, why don't we make what they make in Denver?
Oh, absolutely not. So the employees here make on, you know, average $18 to $31 an hour. So that there's your band based on skills, experience, and certifications. So it's a band that compared to the like I said, the larger systems, it's below their bands and it's above the super small systems. So
yeah, I'd even tell you, I think if we started 18, I almost think that's too low in today's world, personally.
I would agree with you, because, you know,
I mean, I think that would be like 22.
Well, you're working at Lowe's or Home Depot where you're just standing in.
They're getting that much.
Yeah, you get that much, or somewhere like 18 to 22 an hour.
I mean, I think they should be in the, honestly, probably in the 22 to 25 range to start.
Well, our pay band sounds low to me a little bit, But what does a typically an $18 an hour worker here do? What are their responsibilities, or are they?
Well, we have a
technical abilities?
Yeah, right now we have a really good, solid worker that does check that runs the camera truck. And I can't mention names, but he started off at 18 something an hour. Now he's up to 19 something an hour, and he's a he's educated, he's solid, and he has a CDL, and he's getting more certification. So these are solid employees we have. Every one of them have basic education, postgraduate education, college courses. They don't necessarily have 40 degrees or 2-year degrees, but they have college courses, and they study for water distribution, wastewater collection, and CDLs. So
we might be on the low side.
Yeah.
Well, so
I
like
think so.
anybody that has a CDL, like I said, if you use Home Depot or Lowe's, a baseline starting salary of 18, you don't have to have any college or, just a warm body. If you have a CDL, I mean, typically, that's always worth a lot, because there's a lot that goes into that, So that should be the starting point, like a minimum. What's the low end of somebody with a CDL? Because I don't have college doesn't work for the trades and stuff. There it is about what you do. That's CDLs, your classification of
distribution collection.
That's your gold standard.
Yes, and that's exactly what we give raises based on, is those three. This Colorado Department of Health has certification for wastewater collection and water distribution, and then the CDL. So those are the three main ones that you move up the pay scale. So if that pay scale has been around for a long time, starting at 18. So I understand completely. It'd be easy to move the bottom of the pay scale, and not if you didn't want to move the top.
Can I ask you, are you comfortable with the way it's structured now, and looking towards the future? Are you comfortable with the potential or the opportunity to make changes, award bonuses and pay increases? In other words, is it okay in your professional estimation as to how it's doing now and where it's going?
Well, the staff, so I've been in business 35 years, and you have an outstanding staff here. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I work with them every day, and they're amazing. They take care of their customers. They have great relationships, with face-to-face relationships with customers. They take care of the system. They're in compliance, and above all, they work safely. They're using heavy equipment. Everything from backhoes to mini excavators to large vac trucks and everything. And traffic safety is huge. So number one, they're very educated on safety. They're educated on how the system works. They're educated on compliance. They enjoy their work. They work as a great team. There's great team camaraderie. They take care of each other. So you have a fantastic team. And so our goal is to build upon that, build upon this, and build upon their job descriptions. And then, like, we could use that performance pay, if you vote to do that, to say, okay, here's X amount of dollars based on this performance scores of 1 to 5. Or you do both. Some organizations do both a cost of living and X amount of performance. You can do both, or just one. Everywhere I've worked, it's been performance-based raises. And then it's easy to build upon that. And everywhere I work too, like Director Baker said, it's been spot bonuses if you want to go that route too. But you do have an outstanding staff, and that's part of the goal, is to try to retain those employees. And they're very dedicated employees. So
that's what I mean, where you go to like bonuses. If you're not, because you could like break the bank if you're just giving like big raises every year, because that's year over year. But then you should have the ability to give like good bonuses, or give a bonus that is meaningful, right? That people, they feel appreciated. It's like, it justifies what they did. And, I think that's important. So I don't know.
So Director Baker, does seeing this annual review change, is this what you had in mind when you wanted metrics and reviews? Does this meet your standard, or are you interested in something more? Because that was something you were looking at with the HR company.
Well, I'd love to just put this to bed, because, to be honest with you, I felt like I think Kristen, I felt like I was ambushed. That's how I felt when everything rolled out. Because I felt like we were ambushed, it puts us, we're talking in public about our employees and stuff like that. And it makes you sound bad, because you're like, well, you're like, well, what's going on here? and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I would be comfortable, the more I'm hearing that there's a process, you know, it's just like, look, on our side of the table, it's about coming up with the budget, right? And then we approve the budget and then we slide it over to you. And you manage that because that's what you're paid to do. You're the tactical manager, and we, God forbid, this is some of the, you know, I call it overreach. I don't want to be in the manager's hair, you know. I've had stuff like that. I know what that feels like. It's tough to get things done, and I don't think it's healthy. But on the other side, based on, you know, all the churn we've had with the other managers and all the stuff we've had over my time here, it left me, I felt really not good about things because I'm a process guy. That's what I liked about you. You know, it's like we talk the same language. So, you know, if there is a process, if you feel my question to you, if you feel comfortable with managing all of that, then I'm satisfied. If you think you need some HR level of assistance, you need to let us know, and then we would have to approve that. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, yeah, so I definitely feel comfortable because I've been doing this. And to keep in mind, I do rely on SDA and the Employee Council for information every day. So every day I participate in surveys with the SDA, Employee Council, and the American Water Association. And we do share information across other water districts. So I do have not only, you know, large water districts, but also small water districts pay. So I'm confident within, you know, it might be a good idea to raise the bottom of our pay scale. So we do have a good pay range, and I'm very excited about our mission, vision, values, and goals, because I want to make that real to every employee that, hey, we're going to do this, even though they're doing an outstanding job taking care of customers, they care. And I think they really want the community and the board to know that they're doing a very good job, the best job possible. And there's always room for, like you said, continuous improvement based on dashboards. So you know, you'll see how everything, you know, Director Baker knows this better than anybody, you'll see how everything ties together where we show these dashboards, and we're not going to, like Director Hooks commented, we're not going to spend too much time in the future, you know, going through dashboards, because it's going to be repetition, hopefully, and then we'll get more time for detailed questions. So, in direction. So you'll see on the dashboards how it relates to the performance review scales between 1 and 5, how it relates to mission, vision, and values, and how it becomes real, how everything ties together, that process of tying all that together. That way, when we do these presentations, you can just review the dashboards before the meeting, you'll shorten the meetings, and then we'll get right to the important questions of what we have to move on to direction of next. That way we keep continuously improving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so I just wanted to answer your final thing. The thing that triggered me is when everyone started talking about we have managers. And I'm like, that's what triggered me, because the semantics of manager and having more than one and then paying more than one is what really got me here.
Performance-based raises are not typically double digits. Yeah,
and so that's what triggered me. So, you know, that's what brought us to this point. And, you know, it was nothing on you. Like I said, you know, we've had this churn here, and, you know, we want to get this stabilized. So your side of the house can do what it does best, continue to do what it does best, you know, which is provide this great service. And, but yeah, when I heard that triggered me, because it's just, that means something to me.
So here's my question, and maybe a summary. So if I'm understanding you or whatever, right, you're saying that we as the directors would approve a pot of raises, okay?
Just a budget, it's a labor.
Yeah. I'm gonna call it a pot of raises. Okay. However, we have salary, or is everyone hourly?
I'm the only salary person here.
Okay. So if people get raises, and what you're telling me is, so the hourly people, more maybe the techs than, like, say, an administrative function, when they hit certain thresholds, a CDL, a certain wastewater certificate, as they get things, they get raises.
Yes.
Okay. So then my question, so if we give you and I'll just make this up. So you get a pot of X. So you can take that pot and you have whatever, 25, I don't know how many people there, we'll say it's 25. You have 25 people. You can take that, you can evenly distribute it. You can give, 5 people all of it and 20 people none of it. Is there a point in there that do we want to ever give any minimums or maximums, or do we just want the pot given and then he has final say on the pot?
That is the real world. They usually allocate budgets. They used to tell us, get in the box. Now, do that, you want to reward your good people, your people that are just status, people are operating at a status quo level, they're paid status quo level. Your people that are not, that's where you adjust your percentages.
But am I understanding you? That's what we're doing. We're providing a pot to Jeff, and then he based on his performances distributes that.
That's my understanding.
I just want to make sure we're singing out of the same.
Based on his analysis of his crew.
Correct.
And I don't think it would trigger anything if, so when we get to budget season and you work through a budget season, they'll present a budget in October, and it will have a staff list in there because we have to approve each staff member, and the proposed raises will be in there. And I don't think it would trigger any discussion whatsoever if we saw a cost of living plus 1 or 2 to 3% for performers. I don't know, depending on it's just the abnormal large ones that triggered a reorganization conversation. So I don't think historically, looking back, so I mean, just looking back at they did cost of living, and it's only been cost of living plus a couple other performance bases. So I think that's within everybody's expectations here. So
you're saying you want cost of living plus performance?
You could. That's his world. He decides that, like I said,
from our pot.
From a pot, we hand him a pie. He slices that pie as he needs to.
But that's what I'm saying. So we're not deciding cost of living; it's on him.
You're basing it on CPIW.
Because normally, if you go that route, you could actually vote. It's up to you. You vote that route. We could vote cost of living at this percent, and then average performance. Average.
See, I have a problem with that personally, because I'm back to the piling money on top of money.
That's what I was talking about, bonuses.
Because I'll just tell you, at our firm, if you get more than a couple percent, you won.
Okay.
I mean, here we're giving out 4% bonus. I mean, we're giving out way more than I know we've given out in our, and I'm not saying that that it's bad. I'm just saying they're getting a lot more here than I'm seeing in the real world. Not that this isn't the real world, but
just the residents say that too. That's what the constituents say.
So yeah, we need to be, we need to be aware of that too. That's the fiduciary side of it. That we should be able. That's our accountability to the constituents. That since we're the ones that approve all this, we have to be able to reconcile it with this kind of a discussion. So
I don't think it's like a pot of money per se. We're not saying you've got $100,000, split it up. They come to us with the proposed budget that'll say 1%, 2%, 3%, and then you can see that, and that's when you're approving it. Okay. So if you have a problem then that's where we get into it, and you can ask and say, this looks higher, or too many, or whatnot. So if you want to take it out of that process of their recommending
But the way you're describing it to me, he has unlimited power to ask. Yes. The way I'm hearing it is we're telling him what the pot is.
We have to approve a pie that we slide over to Jeff for his staff, and that's what that's what managers do, whether it's a thankless.
Right, but I don't usually go in. I don't usually go and say, hey, I want $200,000, and they say yes or no.
Yes.
I mean, usually Johnny would come to me and say, hey, Todd, you have, I'll make this up, $50,000. You make it work amongst everybody. Not, hey, I think she needs 50,000, he needs 5, he needs 100,000, you need 1,000. I get none.
What?
Right. No, that you're different things.
I'm just giving you what you're worth. But you know what I'm saying?
I think that's what we're doing though.
Well, no, I was just hearing from her that that's not how we're doing it.
No, they asked us. for whatever they want, and then we approve it or not. And the reverse is, do we set the limit and say distribute it and figure it out? And I wouldn't be comfortable addressing that right now, because I know Doug's been doing that and he's got how he calculates all that.
Yes.
But I mean, we could look into that. But that's how they do it now, is say, we've got all of these and we're making this recommendation, and then you just approve it or you don't.
Well, they wouldn't come to us just for round numbers, say, we need or want $300,000, and we would counter with, no, we feel the district can afford 200,000. It doesn't work that way.
You can, yeah.
Oh,
That's how
okay.
we got into
So
these.
I think we're okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't be like the big pot like that. You'd have to say, oh, I see we're doing cost of living at 4%. I want to take it down, because that's how we'd see it in the budget.
And historically, have we ever had an employee appeal to the board itself about anything related to this, like pay is low, or I didn't get my bonus? Does that ever happen? Do we hear from?
I've not seen that, but I won't.
We wouldn't hear that. That would
Okay.
be, Sam might know that, or he's been in a while, but
We're just gonna.
that's the kind of stuff that really, that's the firewall. We should really
Right.
never hear that, or should have to hear that, because that's why you have a manager.
So that's when you can say yes or no when you see that budget. But it'll be an ask. It won't be we give them a pot to decide. Unless you want to change the process.
That's where I'm at a loss. Like I said, I had a box I had to get into, so.
Well,
That's
like
what
I said, I'm
working.
just
I
struggling.
don't know.
I'm
anything
struggling
else.
with the concept.
Well, I'm with
Because
you,
to
this
me-
automatic 3% CPIW is difficult, because it doesn't happen in industry normally.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
So what I'm just saying is, to me, I mean, I guess if I was doling out raises to my friends, I'd be doling out as much as I could if there was no one to rein me in. Does that make sense?
I think probably it was historically different. Like I said, it jumped up after Dave Harcott left, and then we did this cost of living, and I don't know if we've just gotten into, I don't know.
Well, to me, it's kind of gotten
is,
crazy.
but it's a
I
little
mean,
bit
from what I've seen. So it used to be very, like for probably 50 years, it was uniform, and now all of a sudden it's bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it hard for me to, that's why, it finally just came to a head for me.
So can we do an expectation of a new process, just to say, well, we're looking at the cost of living, and do you want to do performance, and maybe say X percentage of employees, and do like that, and do a performance based on top, or only do performance based, or do you want to hire an HR company to come in and talk about that?
So those are three questions I would ask Jeff. So that's what one I just asked him. Do you think you need an HR help on this?
Well, there's no doubt we work with HR every day anyway, whether it be employee council or SDA or Paychex Flex, because they would just suggest, that, hey, this, for example, that's how they made this review. They would suggest, hey, give your people a performance score, and it's really, the vote comes from you. You would have to vote to say, okay, let's just go 100% with performance review raises, and it would be a percent. Say, okay, we're going to give you 4% of that pot. So it's 4%, and it's going, some people could get 1%, and some people could get like 5 or 6%. But it's going to average 4%.
That's what I'm used to, right?
Yeah. So
Let's do that.
that's how you slice it.
So that's one way. That's a way that traditionally I'm very familiar with. Is
See, I'm more comfortable with something like that than, hey, I don't know why. I have never been given unlimited.
no,
And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Nobody should.
So
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And so that's just something that, to me, like, I have X amount of money that I can give people.
yes,
But most of what we get, it's performance. It's tied specifically to your performance. It's not, hey, just because you showed up, you get 4%. Well, you should show up anyway.
Right, and I agree with what you're saying. I think that's what Jeff's saying, and seeing and hearing the process.
Well, if that's the case,
I'm
then
okay
I
with
say
it.
we
That's the direction
don't
we
bother
go.
with the HR people.
I
say
just
forget
wanted to
about
offer that up to him, that if we have to approve any additional, like sometimes you need a little, maybe you need a little HR help. We bring in that vendor, which I guess you could do anyway.
Yeah, we do
Well,
it
it's
anyway.
part of a package with most
Yeah.
payroll, like we use a place called Co-Advantage. And with it, you get payroll, you get benefits, you get HR, like he's saying, whether it's posters, whether it's, you can call, let's say you have a situation where I've been written up 4 times.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
What time is the
The
next?
lobbyist, John Henderson.
John's online, so
I said,
whenever.
okay.
Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, now I'm off track.
Yeah.
Ten
You were talking about your
Hey,
HR group.
Paycheck Flex does do that.
Yeah,
for
so
us.
you can go to them and like, we, for example, had a gal we were letting go because she wasn't sure. And I mean, we just wanted to make sure that it was clearly documented, that it was done in a way that she was, you know, given the expectations clearly, that she, because it was like an older Hispanic woman, to be honest. And it was like, okay, well, she's older, she's a woman, and she's a minority. Are we gonna get sued?
Yes, and Paycheck Flex offers that to us, and they offer background checks when we hire new employees. So if we hire a new employee, we go through all the correct legal.
And so we just wanted to make sure that we legally,
Yes.
you know, did it right, so that we were fair to her and we were fair to us.
Okay.
Okay, so I think,
But that's all included in those companies.
well, I saw with the package we have with them, I think there's
Yeah,
things we can turn on. There's things you can switch
Yes.
on and switch off. And I just want to offer that if he needs it. And if, I don't know if we need a board approval, I don't think you do, because that's another thing a manager's authorized, you know, he's living within his budget. He can turn things on and off as needed, so.
Okay.
I'm okay based on what I heard from Jeff.
That's that contract Paycheck Flex. I said
Right.
everybody, that's that contract.
Is everyone else okay with that?
I-
We haven't said anything, so that's good.
Well, want to make sure I get all the facts before I step on anything. Start off, I'm thrown off because I expected the meeting to go a certain way and it's gone entirely differently. So with that in mind, I have to switch gears. I'll start off with number 1. As I've told you guys before, I don't want to be micromanaging. I just want to be setting policy. And this thing with salaries is not a board decision. That's something for the manager to be doing. So number 1, in a perfect world, manager does that. And I don't want to get involved other than here's your budget. All right, we've all agreed on that. Number 2, the impression I've got over these last few meetings of everybody being involved is we're not necessarily confident that you got a solid foundation to build upon. I heard people saying that we're not sure if people are in the right job. I'm not sure if the job categories are right. You know, I'm not sure we have it set right. So in my mind, the thing to do is set things right once, and from then on, let the manager run it. So I think our intervention should only be one time, and this time only. But now we've spent an hour getting into the weeds, kind of micromanaging this, that, and whatever. And that was not what I was expecting. And what I've said is I'm not confident enough to get into those weeds and go there. I would like to do is have a third party looking at this and then have that objective. So you're not depending upon my ignorance. Maybe everybody else is right on, but I know I'm ignorant. And I would hate to rely upon my ignorance to be the new foundation that we go on. So when we kind of talked about bringing in a third party to review the situation, research it, get it right, and then put it on automatic pilot for the rest of the 4 years of my term, or 3 years. That's what I would like. And instead, we spent an hour getting into the weeds of this, that, and whatever. So I'm not really comfortable with the way things are going. But at the end of the evening, I can choose my battles. If this is the way we want to go, I will go with the flow. But like I say, that's not my choice, not my preference. That's it.
All right, thoughts? Thoughts? Any further actions? to Dave's point, do we need to get a third party, or are we comfortable? When you say get into the weeds, I think it's us. We have not sat down and really gone through what the process is. I have to hear sometimes how we're getting somewhere to understand why we get somewhere. Because when this stuff comes at me, and I don't know how we got there, somebody's got to explain it. And I think Jeff did a pretty good job of explaining that tonight. So this was an informational meeting, you know, more or less. We looked at HR people because that's what they did. So there was no expectation one way or the other. Like I said, this is not my thing either. Trust me, you know. I did a manager's job, but I wasn't at the, you know, the strategic thing with the budgets and how that all worked and that stuff. You know, I always was told to just get in a box, literally.
Well, one of the consultants that we're looking at is the employee council. So we do that's that survey. Who has the survey? That's the survey right there. So we are working with one of the vendors, as you know, that's February of this year. We're working with those people where we constantly work with them with surveying, and that's how we compare our job descriptions and pay scales based on input from the employee.
Yes, but all of that is we are doing this. I would like a third party to come in and say, here's my recommendation, just take it.
Yeah.
Not you know, us work with it and whatever. Because at the end of the day, it's still putting the onus on us. Do we know what we're doing? I don't have that confidence.
Well, you know, I've worked with a lot of HR organizations, and they're going to work with us on our job description because there's not an HR organization specific for water and wastewater collection and distribution in general. So they'll come in and work with us on job descriptions, just, you know, but it's really up to us to make sure the job, you know, we're the experts. So it's up to us to make sure the job descriptions match the people's jobs, and they'll work with us really on performance reviews generally, but it's up to us to really get into the nuts and bolts of performance reviews for each employee. And they'll work with us based on these pay scales that we participate in surveys. So you have, number one, you have job descriptions based on performance reviews, based on, are we in the right pay band? And then we always match it to mission, vision, values, and goals and move in that direction. So it would be a partnership between whoever you hire in the staff, because they're not experts in our field. They're experts in the HR field, but they're not experts in our field. So and keep in mind, if there's so many records in our system, they've done that in the past. I could pull up endless, you know, records dating back for 30 years on performance reviews and surveys and everything. So it's been, there's a lot of information out there that's been done for this exact thing. So that's why our pay scale does match our size. And that's why these evaluations have improved. If you look at, you know, the district manager, Dave, they had, you know, 15 years ago, they're on a computer, they were handwritten performance reviews. So everything's continuously improved over the years. And so that's our goal too, is to continuously improve that.
I'm comfortable with not involving another HR consultant, going as we are now, taking maybe a little bit closer look at budget time. We can kind of question it a bit then, but just monitor it in its aggregate on the whole, maybe take a look again in January or February, see if we're on track, but without getting into the weeds. I'd like to trust the manager to that. Well, the budget's in October, but I mean, take a second look maybe in February or so, but leaving it up to the manager. That's what we hired him for.
That's correct. Anyone else? Karen, I know I see it in your eyes.
I'm okay if you're okay.
I'm okay. So
You know, the only thing, honestly, I would personally suggest is that we lower we increase our starting wage. I think $18 in today's environment is too low. I mean, if we're getting people, that's great, but that just seems personally low to me.
Well, Manager Tyus has the authority to hire somebody at 19 instead of 18.
Well, yeah, we bring them in if they have certifications and experience at higher. So people without certifications and experience, we bring in lower. So
okay.
but we could hire, it's completely up to you, because there's no doubt the bottom of the pay scale for a lot of organizations have increased.
So that's his flexibility. Like I said, that's the weeds we don't want to be in. So
Fair enough.
okay, we're good. So if everyone's good, I'm gonna close out this agenda item. We'll open up the lobbyist agenda item. I'll turn this over to Director Morgan.
Well, I asked John Henderson to come and talk to us, since Director Wickman brought his name up as a possible solution to our problems a couple times during this discussion. So thought it might be worth hearing your experiences and seeing if it is true. Are you the answer to all problems, Mr. Henderson?
Oh, boy, my wife wishes that was true. I'm lucky if I can get my grandkids to agree. At any rate, when I saw that you all were kicking around the lobbying issue, I thought, well, we've had this sometimes painful but very informative experience of 2 years, and I thought it might be of some value to you all to share that. So I've prepared some notes. It's a pretty loose format, so obviously you all are in charge, and please interrupt me if you have questions as I go along, or I'm moving too fast on some area. We had 2 very robust years, 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, essentially trying to get legislation, Metro District reform legislation, passed through the General Assembly. I'm going to kind of walk you through a rough outline of that experience, tell you some of the war stories that may be of some interest and value to you all in making your decisions. There are 5 concepts I'm going to put on the table and refer to constantly throughout the conversation. First is access. The second is education. Third is advocacy. Fourth is trust. And the 5th is getting elected. First, just a quick note about my background. As you all know, I'm an attorney, been practicing for almost 40 years. During the course of that time, I had the experience of acting as an associate general counsel for Fortune 500 company in Wichita, Kansas. And one of my jobs, I had 2 jobs. One was managing multi-district national consumer litigation. We had 10 class actions going at the time. The second was lobbying, working with the state, directing organization out of Washington, D.C. that helped this company enact safe harbor legislation for its transactions. And so I worked with them and was actually involved in the state legislators on 3 campaigns, one in Hawaii, one in Minnesota, and the other in New Jersey, trying to get legislation passed. So I had 2.5 years of that experience as well. Okay, so when we first started on this journey in the summer of 2020, we had a group steering committee of about 10 people. I was one of 2 attorneys. No one else had had any lobbying, if you want to call it that, lobbying experience. And off we went. We got off to a slow start. As you've heard already, the summer really is the meat and potatoes time. That's when the real work is done, the library work, the research work, the drafting work. That's when the real crunch time is. We did everything we could to get proposed legislation drafted in a form that legislators could use in 2020, but our group was still learning, and it took us longer than it should have. Long story short, by November, we had a skeleton for a bill. And then we needed a legislator, and we'd been talking to Mike Weissman for a long time. He was a legislator representing one of our members. They had a close relationship. Mike's a great guy. He's very, very smart. He gets most of these issues, but he's also very busy, and at that time had his plate already very full with issues that he was sponsoring and he was really interested in. But for most of that year, really up until I think up through February, he was saying, yeah, he was going to get something drafted. Yes, it was going to get done. Yes, it would be proposed. Yes, he had extensions. And not being critical of him at all, it just didn't get done. So by 2021, we didn't have a bill, but the industry did, sponsored by the Special District Association, the Metro District Education Association, which was a spinoff of the SDA, and of course the industry group. And just to give you a kind of illustration for how they make sausage in the state legislature, the bill that the industry proposed was called a transparency bill. And it was described or marketed as we're going to make sure metro districts tell future residents and current residents more about what they're doing. But that's really not what the bill was about. Buried into the bill was what I call a Trojan horse. It had nothing to do with this, transparency. What it said was that these single party conflict of interest agreements that form the foundation for many of the financial transactions in metro districts and are simply unenforceable as a matter of law, because you can't have one person agreeing with himself to impose a debt on somebody who isn't even involved in the conversation. And that's what those agreements are. But at any rate, their legislation had buried in it the section that said, these agreements are legitimate, and we're going to put the official stamp of approval by the legislature saying these agreements are legitimate. We blew that up, exposed it, and fortunately we're able to connect with a couple of legislators who were quick studies and got it. And they understood, number one, that this provision was going to codify, turn into law, a conflict of interest provision. And number two, of more immediate interest, there was new litigation in Amber Creek where the residents had raised this as an issue and said, wait a minute, the agreement you're trying to enforce against us is not enforceable for these reasons. And the court was going to be making a decision about that. So this legislation was also kind of an end run around the litigation, trying to get the legislature to essentially make the decision for the court before the court had a chance to do that. So we blew it up, and eventually, in the first committee hearing, the industry withdrew it. And it's on tape, the chief lobbyist for the SDA said, you know, it's a shame you're doing this because this is really the most important part of the bill. And of course, one of the legislators says, what does this have to do with transparency? And it didn't. But they said, number one, it's a real shame that you're doing this because this is the most important part of the bill. And the SDA MDEC also said, but we're going to keep doing it anyway. And they do it. And we need legislation to outlaw it. The reason I share that example with you is this. They make sausage, and there are a number of different ways to get things done and get things passed with, I'll just say it, a sleight of hand, without really the public knowing what's going on. Not only the public, but people like yourselves, like other like not other, but like metro districts, resident-oriented metro districts. And it's not on the radar. It doesn't pop up. And for example, in that context, for those metro districts opposed to this, or similar legislation that a water district might be opposed to, the SDA isn't going to be as aggressive or enthusiastic about representing interests contrary to the interests they're sponsoring and they're advocating by their own bill. So jumping perhaps ahead a little bit in terms of how the SDA does their job for you as one of their members, it's just, a lot of it's just a numbers game. There are 103 of you. There are 1,623 of the metro districts. Metro districts are largely dominated by the developer interest. The SDA and its incorporation papers in 1975 show that the interests that started it in the first place were developer-oriented interests. The attorney who started it, Mr. Collins, still gives seminars to new folks. Mr. Wickman may have met him or his associates at his orientation. So they have their agenda, and that's fine. That's their job. But the lesser, not lesser, but the players that aren't in that same current, swimming in that same current, are not going to get the same kind of service representation that the major players are. So at any rate, that was the first year. Second year, 2021 to 2022, we learned a lot, and we said, okay, let's get it right this time. We had 3 legislators, Tammy Story, who represents part of Jeffco, Andy Basenecker, from I think Will County area, and then Mike Weissman again. Tammy was the star. She actually did what she said she was going to do, introduced low-hanging fruit legislation. You may have seen it. One was to give citizen initiatives to metro districts. You have them in cities, you have them in most of the counties, but they excluded them from metro districts. That's an easy one. And that failed. Some of how sausage is made, the leadership in the legislature, we found, is similar to the leadership at the national level. They are most interested in filling seats with their people. They fill seats with their people by getting them elected. They get them elected with campaign contributions. And as we all know, the interest behind the SDA, the MDEC, have a lot of money. They make a lot of money through metro districts and through other ways. We saw that in Lakewood, $600,000 campaign chest for Adam Paul during his mayoral election, almost as much money spent opposing the 200 citizens initiative. So they were very aggressive, and again had the resources to get folks elected. So in that second year, we had the statute drawn up, we had the legislators, but getting back to Tammy's story, her bill failed. She was the only one who voted for it. The Democrats, had a majority on her committee, 3-2. The other 2 basically threw her under the bus because the leadership had set up the signal saying, we don't want this to happen. And consequently, it didn't, even though she was a sponsor. The general culture or protocol is that the party supports their membership in the committees, and that didn't happen. They play what I call whack-a-mole. In that example, the Republican leadership told the two Republican members of the committee to take a powder, take a vacation that day. And the chair of the Republican, or the head of the Republican leader in the Senate, appointed himself to the committee, and one of the industry spokespersons as Republican members on that committee. And I say whack-a-mole because it happened, we didn't know that was going to happen until the hearing started. Up till that time, we had been sending material, we've been calling, we've been talking to members of the committee, answering any questions they had, trying to educate them as best we could, only to find out that our time was wasted as to the two Republican members because they weren't there. And the people who were there hadn't heard anything from us because we didn't know they were going to be there. So that kind of gamesmanship is active and robust. And as I say, I call it the whack-a-mole because you're never really sure who's going to show up. That happened again with Representative Weissman's legislation that was finally presented the second year. We were told that the local government committee was going to hear the bill, which they had heard the year before, only to find out a couple of days after talking to every member of the committee, sending material, working them up, educating them, only to learn a couple of days before the hearing that it was being assigned to the Veterans Committee. I'd been told earlier that sometimes leadership sends the bills to the Veterans Committee to kill it. And what they didn't know was that we had a personal relationship with the chairman of that just by, luck through some other activities, and also had a relationship with one of the Republican members. Whack-a-mole happened again. The leadership for the Republicans the leadership for the Democrats replaced one of the Democratic representatives with a SDA MDEC advocate, and again, we didn't even know he was going to be there. We had no opportunity to talk to him until the day of the hearing, and he was already loaded for bear. So we lost the bill in that committee 2-3 with the one plant, I'll say, joining up with the Republicans to defeat the bill. So long story short, there's a lot of that takes place and sausage being made. And if you don't have the access, the opportunity to educate, and if you don't have, if you're not on the helping them get elected playing field, you simply don't exist. And that's one of the themes from our experience. We had two attorneys. We had the equities. Everybody we talked to, when we had an opportunity to talk to them, understood. They may have not understood all the details. There are still many folks up there that scratch their heads at the committee meetings and say, what's a metro district? I just don't really understand this. Could somebody explain it to me? So it's a process, but when we have time, when we get equal time to talk to folks, they get it, they understand it, and the merits win the day. But that's not what creates legislation, unfortunately. There's more to it. I mentioned equal time and the stakeholders. One of the complaints by the industry during these 2 years was they did not have an opportunity to sit down with all the stakeholders and talk about potential legislation. That's code for we didn't have an opportunity to talk with all of the special interests, and the public, citizens, groups like ourselves aren't part of the stakeholder family. you have to have a lobbyist. You have to be formally recognized as one of the hamlets of advocates that run the halls there in the state legislature. So as you're thinking about whether or not you want to get into this area, you have to have somebody who has access, who has the trust, who has the opportunity to educate, and of course has the advocacy experience. We literally begged at these committee hearings for equal time with the industry. Again, the gamesmanship, the industry representatives on the committee knew the game. They asked questions ad nauseum, giving the industry representatives hours of time when we had 3 minutes. And it was just a constant battle to get equal access. Similarly, even with the legislators we were working with who were sponsoring the legislation and enthusiastic and promoting it, even they didn't give us as much time as they gave the lobbyists. We frequently heard, well, we met with so-and-so last week, and what do you think about this? I said, why didn't you invite us to that meeting? You know, with all due respect, you all are still, learning. You haven't had the experience of fighting in the trenches and arguing these issues in front of city council or county commissioners. We have, the experience. Please let us participate in those conversations so that you'll rise to the next level in your understanding from the give and take and the debate. So it was because those people were in the building every day. They had lunch with those folks. I'll never, I can't tell you how many times, we introduce ourselves and they say, okay, yes, nice to see you. Even though we've talked to these folks, when the lobbyists, oh, it's so good to see you again. How's so-and-so? And, there are relationships there that we just can't compete with unless you spend all your time in the state halls. Any questions about that so far? Okay, I hope I haven't put anybody to sleep. I have had that problem in juries sometimes.
Well, I guess I could interrupt with a question now then. Can you, because I just thanks for telling the story about that transparency bill, because I had not heard of that. I guess that was last year then, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, you make a sound case that we can't just go up and lobby for ourselves. You have to hire somebody to do this, but watching for that kind of stuff, I wouldn't even know that it was going on. And that's exactly the kind of thing, for example, you say, tell me, did I get this right? You're saying that they were trying to change the law so that they can make contracts for themselves and write a contract so that they can make money for themselves. And really, this is what I mean. They fight us at the legislative level while we're fighting at the legal level. And that one right there, if our Big Sky case comes back to trial court, that might affect us, and we have no idea. We would already lose the battle because they were signing. It was like how many people signed that? I don't know. The point is, you have to watch out at this legislative level as well, because otherwise you're losing before you even get in there.
You look at what happened in Lakewood,
Yeah.
So we have, had it not been a little birdie alerting everybody to the Lakewood IGA, that they were going to vote on it, and in fact did vote on it, and it kind of came up as a storm, right? I mean, normally something at that significant level is usually advertised, a lot of discussion, public input, and it was ground out.
But that's what John's saying with the access, you need it now.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. So there's the state level that, then there's the city level too. Does the lobbyist, if we're looking at a lobbyist, are we getting that kind of access to, are they down, or do they have access to city?
To access to who?
City count, Lakewood,
Yeah,
Jefferson County, are they, are they going to, keep their ear to the ground in Lakewood, in Jefferson County, not only at the State House and, kind of give us a heads up, that's to what Director Morgan's saying. We're just playing reactive, something happens, we have to react. And the only way we can react is legal, hiring lawyers that cost a ton of money, no offense, John, to continue, we're just reactive. We're never able to armor up prior to that. They kind of make the rules up and then drop them on you. Right. We are also a legislative body, so we have the ability to do something.
Yeah. A couple responses. First, at the local level, the city council or the county commissioner level, the lobbying thing really isn't as prominent because there isn't the same kind of dynamic present at the city and county level that you have at the state level. And let me just explain for a moment. In every state legislature I've had any dealings with, anywhere from 70 to 99% of their legislation is written by special interests. It's written by, in most cases, the lobbyists or the lobbyist firms or the industry lawyers themselves, and then packaged for the legislature. In our case, we did write the statute, and they reworked it. They send it to their staff that we don't have access to, and they kind of polish it up and reformat it and perhaps reorganize it. But that's how it happens at the state level. That happens also, as we know, at the city council and the county commissioner level. But it's it's more direct, and you don't have lobbyists involved so much. So this is just me talking based on my experience. I think a lobbyist at the city council and the county commissioner level will probably stand out like a sore thumb. It's more the personal relationships. In our case, just to be frank about it, the developer community, the Chamber of Commerce community, they have direct access to, more access, unfortunately, to some of the leadership, city and county level than the citizens do. And the citizens are always kind of, they're stepchildren to the process, to be tolerated many times. The real work is done, and those business luncheons. So, but the folks there, my sense is aren't so much lobbyists as that they're just the direct players and the lawyers. So I just, a professional lobbyist, I think, might stick out a little bit more as a sore thumb, but that's a conversation you would have with them. I could be completely wrong, and they may have relationships that you would not otherwise be able to have. I think the opportunity for relationships between residents is much stronger at the city county level than it is at the state level. But again, that's a conversation to have with them. Just one other quick example of the litigation side, and you all are really, I'd say shining stars, remarkable, stand out in Colorado. And I suspect that when you go to meetings, SDA related meetings, folks will say, oh yes, I've heard about you. Well, what they've heard about you isn't probably presented to them in a favorable light. You all have been you all have swum against the current. You haven't gone along to get along with the SDA current for how to do these things. And I say that because you do stand out. It would be very easy, and I'm honestly just a little surprised that the power brokers involved in the Big Sky litigation haven't inquired about, and maybe they have, and we just don't know it, opportunities to pass legislation to counter what happened in the Big Sky IGA case. Now it's problematic and it's in litigation and they can't necessarily legislate it away, but there are ways for them to pass legislation that would have a detrimental effect on your powers, your abilities. So I'm a little surprised that, and I always kind of had an eye out for that as we were doing our work the last 2 years, just because, but I never saw anything, never heard of anything. But that's the kind of thing that happens. It happened, as I say, in the Amber Creek case, we blew it up and they had to back away. It happened successfully in, and I can't remember the name of the litigation, but you've heard about it, where the Court of Appeals essentially entered an opinion, decided the issue in favor of the residents against the developer, essentially saying that the developers appointed representatives on the boards were not eligible electors and everything they decided wasn't any good, reversing significant financial decisions that they had made. Literally within 2 weeks of that decision, the industry had the state legislature pass a law grandfathering all decisions by similarly defective electors and saying everything they decided in the past was okay. They couldn't overturn the decision, but they could stop it from happening in each and every other district. So,
Hey, John, how were they able to do that when that's like a state constitution, right? Would that be like, aren't you like, I know you got the different titles, we're Title 32, but you know, all legislative bodies or boards have to follow a constitutional level, correct? And so, and who and how you operate. And I don't know how are they able to legislate around that? That's what
yeah, well, in that case, the turning point, the pivotal issue was you have these folks sitting on boards. They don't live in the district. They don't own property in the district. They don't pay taxes in the district. How the hell can they sit on the board? Well, there's this little exception to the rule that says if nobody else wants to run, the developer can appoint somebody if they have a contract to purchase and an obligation to pay taxes. So what they do is they set up these sham agreements with their employees to say, okay, wink, wink, wink. You have a contract to buy 10 inches of this land and maybe pay some taxes on it. Now I'm going to appoint you to the board. Well, they didn't even go that far in this other district. The court ruled that the people who were sitting on the board were not eligible electors. They didn't live there. They weren't residents. They didn't pay taxes. And they didn't even have this little sham agreement that was that is used often in the industry. So in that case, they said, you're gone. But the legislature came in, they simply wrote in the statute and said, anybody elected under these circumstances is deemed by the state legislature to be qualified electors. We're going to make a special exception for this period of time. Going forward, they have to comply with the rule, but we're going to give them a pass for everything that's already been enacted and grandfathered it in. Was it constitutional? It probably had some constitutional problems, but it wasn't contested because really for the purposes of that litigation, those people won. They walked home with a good result and damages. And they really didn't have an issue to litigate. There was no case in controversy going forward because it didn't apply to them. So yeah, I think it had constitutional problems, but there was no one there to object to it. And unfortunately, that's kind of the rule that's evolved in Colorado Metro District law, and that is if we can do it, say it, and nobody challenges it, then it's legal. And like these single party agreements where the developer agrees with himself to enter into an agreement saying, you, the resident that don't know anything about this, have to pay me a lot of money. They're not worth the paper they're printed on. But until somebody challenges them, they're legal. But anyway, yeah, I mean, your situation, there's some potential vulnerability, and I would want to kind of pay attention to what the legislature might have. But if you all decide to retain somebody, that would be an important charge, is keep the ear to the ground, network with all the folks that are players, and get a heads up if something's moving in that direction. And what the SDA does in terms of inventorying laws that are being considered, you can go to the General Assembly's website. Is really a fantastic tool. They list all the bills that are pending, and in a short period of time, you can go through that list, see everything that's pending. It gets a little crazy in the crunch times, roughly the end of January until March, but you can kind of keep track of that yourselves. But that's easy. That's almost clerical kinds of work. The real work is establishing those relationships, knowing where the key players are, who the MDEC people talk to, talking to those folks, developing a relationship, and likewise with the SDA. One of the other things, I recall there was some conversation about coalitions working with other groups. Again, this is just take it for what it's worth, but my sense of it is that you all really have a neat opportunity to provide some leadership among water and sanitation districts, probably most of whom, if they're not developer controlled, there are some, Mount Carbon, your neighbor is totally developer controlled, owned lock, stock, and barrel. But for the ones that are run and accountable to residents and the public, my guess is that there's going to be some synergy there and interests that that may not even have become apparent, and won't until you guys sit together over pizza or whatever and talk about similar interests and concerns, and you might find that there's some things that you all would like to get done that aren't necessarily things the SDA would initiate, but you all could very easily do that. And once things start happening, the others say, hey, I want to be a part of that. I want to be involved, and could grow something that way, which not only shares the cost, but it's like everything else. The more people you have on your side, the more letters that are written, the more people that come to speak, the more contributors you have, the more access, the more attention you have from the state legislators.
So question. So from a lobbyist, do you kind of get what you pay for? Meaning, like if we just get a low-level lobbyist, are we truly getting access? Are we truly getting our ideas or thought or our protection? Or do you literally, like the developers, do they own all the high dollar ones? And like what do you need to actually penetrate and get access, as opposed to just someone that hangs around and gets you information?
Yeah, excellent question. It's an interesting world, not only from a lobbyist standpoint, but also a legal standpoint. Until very recently, all the money, all of the resources have been sucked up and applied to developers / SDA / MDEC interests. And there was nobody else out there beating the drum like our organization eventually did, and certainly nobody else in the way of lobbyists or attorneys representing those interests. But it's just like anything else. you know, this is perhaps a weird example, but in the asbestos litigation I was involved with very, very early on, nobody ever heard of this stuff. Nobody ever paid any attention to it until one small lawyer and one small firm made $1 gazillion suing the industry. The dam broke, and everybody who could spell asbestos was now an expert in asbestos law and filing actions. Same thing's going to happen here. Once lobbyists understand that there is money to be made in representing what I'll call more resident-oriented interests, and parenthetically can sleep easier at night because of what they're doing, you're going to find more lobbyists gravitating toward that business. Similarly with attorneys. Right now, you know, there are very, very few attorneys who are representing resident-oriented interests because more of the money is in the other direction. So as to the lobbyists, you're not going to find a lobbyist who is really well versed in and has experience in these issues who isn't owned lock, stock, and barrel by the industry. And in this business, there's a brand. So when the industry lobbyists from the SDA and the MDEC walk into a legislator's office, you know, there are neon signs flashing. I represent SDA, I represent MDEC, I represent the industry. And they have a brand, and that never goes away. I mean, even if they abandoned all those clients and did something else, that brand is established, and it doesn't go away. But anyway, so because you're not only starting something new for yourselves, but on kind of the frontier edge of lobbying for more resident-oriented interests or concerns than, say, developer, you're going to basically be growing lobbyists and taking lobbyists who may have some familiarity with the issue but haven't really represented clients, because the only clients right now are developer clients. But it doesn't take long to get up to speed on these issues and understand and get educated in a way that they can be effective. So what you're looking for more than anything else is somebody who has all those connections, has all that experience, if you will, but not necessarily, and probably not at all, in representing special districts. You're going to educate them, you're going to grow them in that way, and they're very aggressive. They're very, most of them are very ambitious and learning as much as they can about new areas, and they'll do that. They'll do that for you. And in terms of getting what you pay for, I haven't done any of this for money, and I don't know, certainly at the lobbying side, I don't know what they make and what the range is, but I don't know how much of a difference or disparity there is between between folks there. But if you get somebody who's really well known in the State House, but hasn't represented developer interests, you're getting what you pay for, and then they'll get educated on your issues soon enough.
Hey, John, do you, so to your point, we have to, everyone has to get a lobbyist, because some reason just being a citizen and you've elected people doesn't mean anything anymore, I guess. Is there to do our due diligence, and it's a two-part question to you, have you talked to Chris Kennedy, who's our House District Representative for the Green Mountain area? And should we invite him and put his feet to the fire
I would really.
Well, go ahead.
He's about as development as you can get. So I mean, talk about speaking to the choir, the other choir.
Yeah, but it's holding his feet to the fire. Where the fire, it's his feet.
He don't care. He's going to get elected.
It's still a due diligence. I think. Yeah. Do we start there? Is it worthwhile? Or I mean, like, you know, if you're look, he's our state legislator for here.
Yeah, and, I wouldn't discourage that at all. I think, you know, it may be a waste of time, but what these folks need to know is that you're out there. You may have a different perspective and a different position on issues that's something they've never heard before. And that, you know, the radar goes up. I mean, they are elected. You all are public leaders. You all have a public platform, and they know that. So you're influencers, to use the term that I still don't understand. But the bottom line is, yeah, I would definitely establish a presence in their minds, and if nothing else, you know, it may, even though they may be rabid advocates for something that you don't want to do, they're going to at least have some pause and remember a significant constituent of theirs doesn't agree, and unless you will have that conversation with them, they aren't going to know that. Yeah, but I mean, I agree. Kennedy is on the short list of Metro District advocates, and I don't know whether he changed his mind about anything, but establishing a presence in his sphere is at least a little irritation. And sometimes those irritations generate different results. So it's certainly worth it. Tammy's story, I can't say enough good things about her. She is Jefferson County. It's not your senator, but she gets it, and I would reach out. I'd see if you could have a conversation with her. She's campaigning now, and I would certainly be interested in talking to you all. I think I haven't had any conversations with her really since the end of the session, but I think a lot of her, and she was willing to stand up and get shot down in a really dishonorable way, and then still get up and keep fighting. So she's one to watch, and somebody I hope others will gravitate toward as these issues continue to be debated. But yeah, reach out to all folks, and as I say, unless they know there's somebody that disagrees, they're going to repeat and repeat and repeat again in every hearing. All my constituents are in favor of this. I've never heard anyone complain about it at all. Nobody disagrees with whatever the policy is.
John, if I can interrupt for just a second, I want to circulate this around, because as I was requested to put together, and you saw it, a client list for we've got two proposals right now. Anyway, the question was, do you get different quality of lobbyists, basically? And I want to say again that part of that point that you made, John, about there not being any money in this right now, I don't know if it's that people are looking to try and get into that lane and make the money for the developers, but there aren't, even if I can find somebody, like I said, I put hours into calling people, and even if I could find somebody who wasn't on the list, was already lobbying. And I could find somebody that kind of worked around because the websites are far and few. This is word of mouth. They had entanglements, or they didn't want to wade into this because they want the money that's on the other side. So you have this is a fight, and you had to find somebody willing to wade into that fight. So that was one. So I wanted to ask you, John, about it, because the question then came up again about on this client list. Now, I've got Mark Waller's got rural hospitals, they've got treatment centers, McClosey's got, you know, he's the Democrat partner of the Mark Waller firm. He's got the small businesses and the information sharing. The client list for the Atwood Public Affairs, I didn't list out, I just screenshotted them. One of them that you can't see, it's the first big A there in the circle, is the Associated General Contractors. So the opinion has been put forth that the Associated General Contractors are somebody that we need to stay away from, that they are lobbying hard for the Metro people, and any association with them means that we can't work with them. What have you seen their involvement at the state level?
So we Holland and Hart.
Yeah, I haven't heard the name of that organization in the 5 years I've been researching and working on these things, and they haven't surfaced as, you know, one of the Metro District abusers or key participants with SDA and MDEC. And let me just add, you know, quickly, I mean, and I think I share this sentiment with a lot of other folks, perhaps among you, I know is among you. That is, you know, there are good developers out there that you know, are doing the right thing and doing business the right way. And then there are bad developers, and they're the abusers. So I don't know anything about these folks. They're not on the abuser radar. But that's, you know, that's a conversation you can have with the lobbyists. I mean, the lobbyists are aggressive marketers. They're going to market themselves to everybody they can who they would like to represent. So if they're interested in your business, you know, they'd have the obligation to explaining if there are any conflicts, number one, and number two, if conflicts arise in the future, how do you deal with it? You know, how do you go through the process of deciding which client to, you know, gently or politely push to the side and go forward with representing the other client on that particular issue.
We think alike on that. So what I did is I asked about that one, and you zeroed in on the answer already. Her response was this. She didn't say this, but this Associated General Contractor, she's the Amy is the budget, does the budget for them. So she's not lobbyist, and that's why she didn't register when I saw her on the Secretary of State. She's not lobbying for them for that. She does but in this, it's probably a matter for public disclosure, because this Amy Atwood was running against Director Wickman for City Council some years ago. So there may be some conflict here, but we can't all be, I mean, the rumor went around for director, board candidate, Rob Wilson, that he was for developers as well, and he fought against the Associated General Contractors. So either way, we've got for the Associated General Contractors and against the general, and they can't both be pro-developers if they're going to exploit the city. I mean, we have to be a little bit logical and get some evidence for what we're saying here. And I don't, both of these people have run the traps and say they have the clients, and they're not in, one, not only not in conflict with anybody, but they are also willing to fight. Anyway.
Well, an interesting trend. So I see the city of Westminster on here.
Yes.
And you have city of Lakewood employees who are doing a mass exodus, and they're going to Westminster. So kind of an FYI, what does it mean? I don't know.
Well, the city of Westminster, those were the law cases that I was finding where they were doing good things with their water.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's, look, there's two things. I agree with you on one.
Yeah.
But two, I also know there's, there is a large exodus from Lakewood City staff. A lot of their folks are going to Westminster, which maybe that's going to doom them eventually. I don't know.
I do not know.
Anyway, just kind of an FYI. I don't know what it means, but something means something.
It's a small world. You are going to get. But I wanted to ask you what you knew about that. And then, was there anything else on your list, John? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I think I covered all the points that I wanted to raise, and as always, if you all collectively or individually ever have any questions, feel free to holler. As always, it's doesn't do me any good to have this stuff rattling around in my head. So if I can share it with folks who can make use of it, I'm more than happy to do that. We are, our group is likely going to mount another effort in this next session, and I was just invited to join a representative who is putting together a kind of a consortium of folks to look at new Metro District policy reform. So that's, again, this is the time that work is being done. So I'm really excited that there's some interest in that. And to the extent I get involved and they include me more as we go along, and if it's appropriate, I'm happy to share those experiences with you as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I did send an email to one of our constituents specifically asking what you asked us to do is look at representation that affect water districts and not SDAs as a whole, to try to get them to partner up with us. And that's the way I worded it, just by direction of the directors, and what you just said is hey, the water districts don't get the same representation as all the other SDAs, so please pass on if anybody wants to partner up with WADAs.
So I think the right verbiage would be there's water and sanitation districts like Green Mountain.
Yeah.
Then there's metro districts.
Exactly.
That's the correct. Is that the correct discriminator, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. The metro districts are, just to put a fine point on it, many are still developer residential controlled metro districts. There are some not some, but there are many metro districts that are resident controlled. But both forms of metro districts are a very, very, very different animal from water and sanitation districts. So, yeah, some of the things that, we're talking about, you already do. I mean, you guys are, and when I say you, it's water and sanitation districts. So our focus and reform efforts are not attributable to the vast majority of water and sewer districts. Now, carbon is kind of an exception because it's just I mean, there is nothing public about that organization. It is lock, stock, and barrel private developer organization, and that's a subject for different conversation. I blogged on it a couple weeks ago, but in terms of the future there for the Rooney Valley community, I worry about the future residents and what burden that's going to place on institutions like yourself and the municipalities, in another 5 or 10 years.
Well, it's going to burden the whole state of Colorado for sustainability of water. So you might want to go with the heavy hitters and lobbyists with energy sustainability, because it's going to affect not only supply of water but also energy.
So I'm hearing there's a possible rumor there's going to be a state of emergency declared about water anytime now. I mean, it could happen within the next couple of weeks, either at the federal and or state level. rumor, it's a rumor, but it makes sense. I mean, you look at, once again, Lake Powell today, they had the transformer blow up, but there's always something weird going on.
That was Hoover Dam.
Hoover Dam, sorry.
Yeah.
So we you know, we're out of water. You know, we've got a Colorado River compact is coming up. You know, the Arkansas Valley, you know, all these things are all coming to a head. And then I just saw Bear Creek today's in an algae bloom, so got a very toxic thing going on there. What's that cost from, right? So.
Yeah, Denver Water includes the level of Lake Powell in their monthly report, so the level is dropping continuously.
Well, so this gets to that whole, this thing, I mean, we got to keep an eye on this for whatever that's for Bear Creek, but you know, I think algae blooms are caused from low flow issues, and they're very toxic environmental disaster, really. And we're talking about having to expand that, or you know, it's not good. Water's not looking good for Colorado, so expect, you know, I don't know what that means for us because we're just a pass-through district, but it can't be good. So.
Well, I think Mr. Tias is right, and one of the ways that we can do that is back to legislatively and say maybe we should be able to make the decisions and not just Denver Water for our whole area, but that would be a legislative change.
Well, we all have a seat at the table. We live in Colorado. We're Colorado taxpayers. We live in Lakewood. We're Lakewood taxpayers. We live in Jefferson. You know, we have a seat. This thing, like what John's talking about, there's this misconception about what the hell an actual stakeholder is. You know, that's what's wrong here.
That's true. Don't tell me. Tell the people he's been fighting it.
Yeah.
Well, it's both ends. You have a water supply, but the loading of nutrients into the receiving streams causing algae bloom. So just like our lawyer Dylan talked about at our last meeting, the discharge permits on Bear Creek are exceeding because of development. So now that's on the wastewater side. So now you have more discharges in Bear Creek. So
that's all upstream.
All upstream is going. That's the nutrients causing algae bloom.
Right.
So it's the same. It's both sides. So you don't have a water supply, and then you have overloading of the pollution of the Clean Water Act, really. So that's why it should be at the state level, and you should be able to put enough pressure by using other high hitting energy level, and then move it up towards the federal level, because
and yet they're not. See, that's the problem. That's why I wonder if we should get Chris Kennedy, at least tell him, you need to come in here and tell us what's going on.
Well, Corey Gardner started the Colorado River Pact, and we do that with Arizona partnered up. And in Aurora, city of Aurora manager Marshall Brown testified in front of the U.S. Senate for that very reason, because we don't have the sustainability of water supply. And Aurora is one of the fastest cities growing in the United States, and they don't have the sustainability.
But are you allowed to tell, like, are we allowed to tell people no more taps, no more water?
No, but the problem, you know, the thing that's going back all the, you know, the issue is we all have a part ownership, like the constituents have a part ownership of Green Mountain Water and Sanitation. We also have a part ownership of Denver Water, right? I mean, that's not a private company, that's a public entity. Am I correct on that, Joe?
Well, we report to the board. They have a Denver Water board. We're part of the distributor forum that has a voice towards the board.
But it's a public owned. Denver Water is a public one. It's not
private.
It's
board. Yeah, it's board.
Yeah. So
it's not private.
Right. So that's my point. You know, we are the stakeholders. We all have a piece in this. So, you know, and I'm telling you, it seems like the compression of events are accelerating rapidly right now. Nothing would surprise me right now, honestly, with water. Literally nothing.
When we talk about legislation, one legislation that passed that we all know about, that's obvious, is the turf replacement. You know, that passed legislation, and that's directly involved with not being able to sustain enough water. So that takes effect next summer. So everything overlaps between energy and sustainable water source, and also the discharge of wastewater. That's why Rooney had to go to Metro to say, hey, can you handle this amount of loading or solids if we ship it to you, because they're discharging into the South Platte.
Yep.
Yeah, I only have one more. I have one more piece of new information, because I was asked, talking to the lobbyists I wanted to share. I thought maybe they could come in and do a presentation tonight too, but this was good and just enough information. So thank you, John. The other thing, when I was talking to Mark about coming in, he said, which I did not know, that he had experience at the state level. He said he knew all about Lakewood's shenanigans because he was in the state house when Lakewood made agreements with Rooney Valley developers and then de-annexed and let the county be on the hook for it. So all of that problem, he was involved with trying to clean up, and they passed legislation for that. So he knows something about that. So it is going to be an uphill education battle, like John says, but there's just a lot of things to go. So anyway.
Okay. Anyone else have anything on this at this time?
Or where are we looking at going at this point?
This is an informational meeting, and we're just, yeah, so what are you
We're not voting on anything or whatever?
Nope. Nope, tonight's all information.
Well, for what it's worth, the general concept of getting a lobbyist, I agree with it, it'd be a good idea. Obviously, I don't agree with Atwood. Waller would be fine with me. So for what it's worth, that's.
Okay. Well, John, thanks. I mean, if you want to hang around and hear, because I think I'm going to be putting something on the agenda for the next board meeting coming up. So, thank you so much.
Great to see you all. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So I'm going to close out this agenda item, and we're going to move into new business and notifications. And I guess I would like to put a post on for an agenda item is the vote on the lobbyist for the next board meeting. Do I need to? I don't have a lawyer here. I don't think we need a motion. We'll just put it on the agenda.
Right.
So does anyone else have anything they want to add? Oh, I also want to maybe extend I want to extend an invitation, Jeff, to Chris Kennedy, who is the House District 23. He is our state legislator. I would like him to come in and probably hear the board. If we give him what, 5-10 minutes, just tell him we need maybe 10 minutes or something like that.
I would think it'd be more effective if you want to go down and talk to him first. Well, you want him to give an information?
I want us to be able to ask him questions in a public meeting.
Okay.
He's our state legislator. Here we're talking about a lobbyist. We're talking about everything being convoluted.
Yeah.
The due diligence is bring in the person who was elected, who is our state legislator, and say, look, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Here's what we're facing.
Here's what we're facing. Here's what we're having to do, because it sounds like you guys got a payola thing going on down there, and we're not happy with it. And, you know, we understand what we may have to do because it's on our agenda,
right,
but we're not happy with it. And where are you representing us on this? So I would like to at least extend that out or talk to you guys about putting that on the agenda. They'll probably just blow us off, and you know what? We'll talk about that in the board meeting. I'll say, yeah, he blew us off.
there you go.
So I would like to extend, that's the due diligence. Let's give them a chance to answer the bell.
Well, I guess while we're at it, what about the other ones that represent us?
Well, this is our state legislator. This is literally for right
we've
here.
got at least 2, maybe 3. Kennedy is in I think his last term. So, I mean, he'll be there next year or something like that. I'm trying to remember when his term's up, but he's nearing the end of being termed out. Then we have a senator, and
we'll talk about that offline.
Well, as far as inviting people to lobby, I mean, anybody.
Yeah, it's like, I think there's, you know, some of the issues with the upcoming, when I say offline, I think there are some of the people I know on the horizon are problematic with this. The people that are in there are problematic with this. You know, I'm at a loss. Honestly, I'm really at a huge loss, because when we're talking about us representing our people here in this water and sanitation district, and then these House district and state Senate people who should also be representing all of us, you know, we need to, that's to a larger sense, hold their feet to the fire like we need to be held. We all need to be held to the fire because we all answer to the public.
In theory.
Well, no, it's not in theory, it's law.
Well, no,
And
but
it's-
I mean, listening to John,
Well,
he's
I
basically
agree.
saying that we're third-class citizens.
Well, but that's
You know?
true. That is just the way it's done. Look, you know why that happens? It just says it. It just becomes accepted. If no one challenges it, if you never stand up and shout, oh, they just let it happen. It just keeps going.
I'm
Well, that's-
concerned though that this idea of a lobbyist at our level is so speculative. I just don't see any return on it. Well, it's a grand idea, but
So, but what if we do it speculatively to see what we get out of it?
So you go back to the key point. You look at we've got the litigation we're involved in.
right.
He just gave you a potential reason why that would be important, because and what Director Morgan said, we're either gonna, our only option is legally, which means at the end of the whip, which is us, and the only thing we have to manage that is a group of lawyers. So we have to wait for that whip to crack, and then we have to hire lawyers to deal with that. We need to start crawling up the whip. That's what I think.
No,
How we get there, I don't know. But I think Director Morgan's onto something here. To what Director Hooks is saying, is it speculative? Yeah. But we obviously have an issue. Look at the city council thing. I was there. It's like, I couldn't believe it. It was just like things.
Can we be a thorn in the side that we prick their consciences?
Well, I think that's what you need to be doing. It's like people, if nobody says the king's naked, right? It's like we all just think, oh, that's great, And they're literally naked, right? The king does not have any clothes. It's like we need to be saying that.
Remember, John said it really well. He said that Mount Carmel is 100% developer. So if you look at these so-called districts that call themselves water and sanitation districts, their offices are in Greenwood Village. Dominion Water, there's United Water, they're all in Greenwood Village. And
they show no board of directors.
Yeah, they don't have they're business people on a board and they're making decisions. And that's what's driving a lot of these water rates up that you see in the great areas, because they're making decisions without any accountability and they're hiding behind Title 32 to make those decisions. So they're protected and they're paying these top rated legislators, as lobbyists to protect them, just like John said.
Well, you saw the stuff on Mount Carmel.
There's the contradiction. I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's a contradiction with Title 32 with the SDA, right? So we're all held to, like, when we're elected, there's things for directors in these water and sanitation districts, right? And there's 103 of us. Now you go over to the 1,063 metro districts. It's like Wheel of Fortune. Oh, I'm a three-legged dog, and I can't see, and I'm now a board of directors on my own. And nobody challenges. There's nothing to challenge that. We get challenged. We have things we have to follow. Rightfully so. They are not. It's a double standard. See, that's why I said constitutionally, you can't have like a double standard for the same thing. It's a double standard.
Well, I know at Mount Carbon, again, they have, when I was looking at their financial statements, they have so much money out in debt and bonds. It's crazy. I mean, literally, they're just up to their eyeballs in debt. And, where does that go?
It's going to pass on to the customers.
It's going to pass on to the customers.
Yeah.
But the developer, I'm sure they're, back to, if they're even here or even live here, where they're not stakeholders, they're not true electors. I mean, it's like Solterra is the great example with like the taxes. I mean, you show a house up there, and let's say you have a house up there that's $1.2 million. The taxes on it are probably $10,000. You can go down to unincorporated Jeffco, buy $1 million house, and the taxes are maybe $4,500 to $5,000. So why is Solterra 10,000 and they're 5,000? Because you have people who are just taking money and making money.
It's a money stream.
It's a money stream.
Yeah,
there's no reality to the tax base.
And there's no accountability because you can never.
To go back to the question at hand, as you can tell, I'm kind of torn, so I'm not one way or the other. But on the one hand, I'll sit there and say, having been in government, you're far more effective if you can get into the process at the beginning, rather than trying to change the boat when it's already going down the
We
road.
saw that.
Yeah, and so in that sense, lobbying can be very powerful. The flip side is, maybe there's no lobbying to be going on here. I don't know. It could be argued that the legislature is not going to be doing anything, but then they might be doing something. So I say on the one hand, on the other hand, SDA, on the one hand, I've known them for years back when I was on the fire board, and I knew from the very beginning, those are developer establishment types, and I don't trust those as far as I can throw them. But anybody I can't trust, I can still work with and maybe get some advantage, maybe information we can get out of them. So, and when we talk about speculation, that's why I'm kind of torn. On the one hand, it could be a salvation. Maybe our lobbyists will save the day. On the other hand, it could be a total waste of money. And in my mind, it's kind of 50-50. I don't know which way to go. When we talk about individuals, as you know, I do have an opinion on that. And if and when we come to that, I want to tell you the whole story about the output. So anyway, I was just going to add into your speculation comment.
Well, tell us the story.
Yeah, before.
Oh, okay.
This is an informational thing, so that, it's probably good to drive out everything now and we get into board meetings, so we're not like bogging it down to where we're here at midnight. We just get in and, we've already done our due diligence and.
Yeah, I want to get out by 11:30.
That's kind of.
Well,
We're not making it to midnight. I'm just trying to stay awake.
well, do you want me to read this? Or?
No, please, Dave.
Okay.
No, I meant at the board meetings. That was a joke.
Oh, okay. Anyway, as you alluded to, I ran into Atwood when I was running for city council. I tried to get her on my team, but Paul got her on his team, and they were running her against me as the development candidate. Well, so obviously I've done some research. In the past, she was the financial officer for a construction company, Clemens Construction. Well, okay, did that for 11 years. Well, what's the significance of that? Her family owns a construction company. And so she was working for the family business. The family business is this construction company. Okay, moving right along. Okay, her clients, you saw the list right here. Okay, well, one of them was the Associated General Contractors. Well, as you can well imagine, they're of course involved, they're going to be affected by development. But for example, the head of the Associated General Contractors ran for Lakewood City Council against Mike Pita. And obviously they were the Adam Paul candidates. So obviously Adam Paul and the gang thinks that the Associated General Contractors are great. Other clients, E2 is a construction company and does construction management. API, the Associated Petroleum API Institute. It's the oil industry. But anyway, oil industry is pretty development oriented. And this AIT was tobacco company. And what was the last one here? The HC, the Housing Corporation or whatever. Housing Colorado. Housing Colorado is the advocacy group for affordable housing. Now, obviously, nobody's against affordable housing except for you got to have more development to have affordable housing. So a bunch of her clients are all development oriented. Now, granted, it's like a lawyer, you could sit there and say, I want you to ignore your personal interest and be responsible to service only me. You're a hired gun. Well, technically a hired gun could do a good job. But on the other hand, like I said, in the back of her mind, she's always been working for development. So for me to put all my eggs in that basket, I just can't go there trust-wise.
Also, an interesting point, Director Hooks works for an architectural firm. So, my background going through the trades and everything, I mean, I've had a hand in construction. There are things that are reasonable and sustainable, and there are things that are not. And, you know, so without betting, you know, and we do probably need to vet this stuff a little further. You know, I hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because it's like, just because somebody builds something, there are good builders. I think there are people that are legitimately, obviously they're good builders, and then there's people that don't get to, you know, what's. They'll do it, you know.
The difference, I mean, to me, like in an architectural firm, we're obviously, I mean, I'm not against development. What I'm against is like the metro district, these special districts, people taking advantage of just residents. I don't have a problem. I mean, if you want to build houses and you're a legit builder, build 1 million of them. But if you want to saddle everybody around with millions and millions of dollars of costs that you just walk away with, and they really should be your cost, that's my issue. It has nothing to do with the building of it. It needs to be fair and right.
Well, they used to say we build communities, right? There's some builders that we build communities. And like Hutchison, when they moved in here, they built schools, they built parks, you know, they built stuff, they built a community. Anymore, it's like, oh my God, we've got, you know, like 10 by 12 square feet. We're going to go 1,200 feet high.
When the city, right.
That's the difference.
The city and the counties, whereas it used to be the developer was responsible for the schools, the acreage, for all of that, which are millions of dollars. Now they have the in lieu of. In lieu of is like $250,000 and what just, so let's use, you know, along Solterra again in the Ruby Valley. You know what land they donated? The ravine, the stuff they can't build in, the stuff that literally is the bad, that's what they gave to us. So you can't put a schools in there, but again,
you can't do anything in there because the EPA now put the ravine is now a federal waterway.
So the last time I saw Jefferson County, and this is my memory, that I'm probably off, but this is my recall. An elementary school was about $4 million. A junior high school was about $8 to $10 million. And a high school was like $17 to $20 million. They literally, a developer will give us a few $100,000 and walk away. We're like Hutchinson.
With no land.
With no land. And Hutchinson, literally, at the time, of course, they lived here. They were Colorado residents. And, you know, they put up the land, they put up the schools, and they were truly like citizens, part of the community. The developers we have today, you know, no offense, I mean, anybody can live wherever they want, but if, you know, Joe comes in from any state outside of here and Joe just wants to build 1 million units and then saddle everybody here with every problem, and we let him, and then he walks away.
That's the point right there. We let him. So you're supposed to have your city with ordinances, those kind of things, balances and checks, right? Well, it doesn't happen anymore. You know that. You create zoning laws. And in fact, what do we have? A meeting, today's the 19th, tomorrow night, we have a meeting over zoning, right? Yeah, can you guys just like let the zoning slide? Everything is always let the zoning slide, am I right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So I guess I should focus on her family business, I guess is not the issue. Like I said, all I know, she's been involved in politics for decades now. And always, she was the one pushing for development. She, you know, the Adam Paul candidate, stuff like that. And so in my mind, it's like getting Adam Paul, he's going to be retired from the mayorship pretty soon. Maybe he wants to go in the lobbying business. And he can come in and say, well, I know the business and stuff like that. And if you hire me, I will be your hired gun. You know, maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't.
I'm having you drug tested.
I like your thinking, Dave.
I gotta say, this is, you like to throw Adam Paul out for anybody you don't like. And this is a little personal, and I understand that. But that doesn't mean that this is a grand conspiracy to backdoor Adam Paul as a lobbyist, and he's not going to be working like that. I go back a few years to when you were running, Solterra was being built. There, at that time, it wasn't the big development fight. That wasn't then. That was a little bit later. But I understand Adam Paul and the establishment. You've always been establishment. but those are two different things. And you're, like I said, you try to tar Rob Wilson with the same thing. Well, he works for construction. We can't just tar the entire construction industry. I do modeling for mining companies. That's like an oil company. I also do it for environmental companies because it's on the same side. But how about anybody who brings in a new business? They're good, but they're bad because they're building the community. I mean, you can tar the entire community like that. So I don't have anything for either one of these people. I did the work to try and find somebody who could fight and who was willing to fight. If you've got an alternative, bring them up. It'll take some work. But if you can.
I'm going to go with one on top, that baller guy.
And there's Mark. So I did bring him in. I would like, instead of making it so personal, to evaluate one, my first goal is I think we need to engage in this battle for all those reasons. Two, who do you want? And it keeps coming back to Amy just because you say, can we do it at the city? She can do it at the city level. She wants to do it at the city level. If you don't trust that, that's okay. You have your choice of Mark, but think about what you want before.
Well, so when we
Make that
talked about
decision.
the city level and John's like, oh, you'd be like this tall male, that'd be really weird, right? But I know one of the constituents who's online tonight went online and spoke at City Hall tonight. You know, we all spoke, and you know, it's just theater down there. Like, yeah, let the village idiots try, say what they want, and then they just do what they're going to do, right? I mean, they let you vent, but it doesn't change their look. Their minds was there. It was a done deal. They just had to let us come in, shed a few tears, act like we're, you know, complaining about something, and then they do what they want. That's how this is going. And there's no, they're never, you know, so it's what John's saying at the city level or even county, the public, no matter what, I've seen city council packed and watched them still like, yeah, fly the flag, don't care. And, you know, and it does matter somehow at the voting time, but and yet it doesn't. So long story short, you know, we're speculative because we're running out of options other than waiting for something to happen, and then we have to pay lawyers to mitigate the impact or the problem.
Do you think there's a correlation between this recent state law passed to give the authority to a municipality to dismantle an SDA with development? Because it's kind of like, hey, if you guys don't cooperate, we'll just go to the city and have you dismantled.
That's exactly what that is.
That's exactly what that is, and that all starts with state lobby. So you're gonna have to hire some guns to protect the citizens because the citizens are protected in that type of situation.
To be fair, let me give you some background. That is not. I bring up that scenario as it is now passed into law, and it looks like a great thing to take advantage of if needed. The original intent was there's a defunct special district down near Colorado Springs, I want to say, what's the name of the county, and they couldn't do it. So they're trying to make it easier so they didn't have to do the petition process.
Yeah.
So now they can do it. Developers are not going to do that now. If they need to do this, that's again, they'll get people on the board, they'll make it happen, and it won't be now, it'll be when we're sleeping.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're not going to take advantage of that rule to do exactly what you said.
Well, and that falls up, you know, really the saving thing has been the tabor laws, right?
Right.
That's been really.
That's Colorado's saving grace
That
for
is
30
Colorado's
years.
saving grace for a lot of reasons, that because of tabor issues, that's the firewall. And now they're trying to de-tabor everything in the State House. You hear it every day. Out of those 600 bills that went in front of the State House, how many of them were to de-tabor something? And oh, by the way, everything they have de-tabored, they've already spent all that money and want more on top of it.
That's true.
Right.
So there's no end to it. That's why you have tabor. That's why we talk about budgets. You know, it's like we all have to get in that box. How could, you know, everybody needs to get in that box.
And Lakewood wants to de-tabor again.
Of course they do. And then we're sitting on a bridge, right? That nice Alameda bridge over there that we loaned money to somebody.
3 dinos,
and you know, millions of dollars. I mean, wow, we're just an altruistic city here. We just, you know.
The best part is we don't even ask for it back.
You know. So, but that's, see, that once again, that's being on the end of the whip. You know, you're waiting for it to all get out and then crack and you get a welt on your head from it, right? And I don't want to, I'm tired of that. Like, let's get up the whip. The closer you get to the handle, you take the energy out of it. I'm sick of being on the receiving end of this.
Oh, I can agree with the logic of doing the lobbies.
It's taken me a while. Like I said, I've been kicking and
It's a new
scratching.
concept.
If
It's a
we
change in
get
the
a good one, if we get a bad one, next.
Well, to me, we're not gonna know until we try it. I mean, that's, I mean, to go with Roger on the speculation. I mean, that's the thing. I think we'll either find out it's worth it or we'll find out it's worthless.
Well, so it gets back to
One or the other.
like when you write a contract, like we're talking with Jeff, and you know, you have to write a statement of work. What do you want them to do? What are your expectations?
I'm working on that.
So
So I'll
that's
look at
what'll
next
be key is like, what does the statement of work look like? If you just give somebody like, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. And run
Here's
off,
30 grand, have a nice
whatever, it's
life.
like, yeah, come back and I kind of did this and I kind of did that. And there's no accountability, but if you write a level of statement of work, some kind of a statement of work, and just like the whole thing with employees or all of us, right? There should be expectations, some kind of expectations.
It is hard to have that because most of it's just let us know what's going on, but you don't know what's going on. So you have to have that broad thing. One other thing Mark did bring up on his contract, I don't know if it was in my conversation or in his proposal, that he was willing to do a 30-day notice cancellation. I didn't ask Amy about that. He just brought it up.
So do you normally pay them
It's-
monthly or how do they pay them?
It's a year-long contract normally because you're going to start paying now, but the real work will be in, the time sink will be in session, but they'll be working now. So there'll be more hours later, but you may not see.
They'll be working on their lake house, they'll be working on their boat.
Anyway,
I'm
one,
just
You're not
kidding.
helping the cause.
one other thing to put up on the agenda for next time, that if this goes through, so there'd be 3 motions, one for a lobbyist, one for which one, and then if this would go for, like I don't know if I said when you two were on the board or when it was first brought up, that because I started talking about this back in March. If this would go forward, you would have to designate a legislative committee, because especially during legislative session, things will move fast and it won't be able to go on.
So you're talking about a citizen committee that we have to?
No, that would be 2 of us, 1 or 2 of us. We could invite citizens if you would like. We'd have to, you know, go. But it would start with 2 of us. Do you want to do citizens?
I just, when you say committee, I just.
I think it would be more prudent, especially in experimental time, to keep it nimble right now, because that is part of the thing, to make sure that you can keep up with. Can you talk today? It's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
All right. So then.
So put that on.
That would be one agenda item with A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. So if you're interested, think about if you are interested.
So do any directors need anything sent to them to help you?
Well, have they given us potential fees?
I believe so. Is it not in the proposals? They are both, they're about 30,000.
Okay.
Amy's.
I thought I remembered reading
30,000.
30,000 once, but I was just.
Yes. Well, the ones I called around, they're all in the 30 to 50. I know she's at 30, and I think Mark is as well. He might be 33, 35.
So I think just to be good, we need to probably have everything get into Jeff to be redistributed to all the directors, so we're seeing the same info.
I believe it's.
Because I don't want us to talk down at the board meeting. I want the information to go out now. It's your due diligence, it's upon every director here to do their homework and come in ready to vote up or down on this thing. So.
Do these lobbyists work when the legislature isn't in session? Do they lobby them at home or at picnics or anything? Or?
They will be working, yes, now. So really, this is the August meeting is about the time. From what I'm hearing, by September, positions are getting hardened and the things are written. So this is really our last chance, and they will be chasing them down wherever they can.
Anything else? Nope. Anyone else want to add anything to the agenda?
One more question, at 30 or 50,000 or whatever it is, they're not full-time. We don't expect a 40-hour week out of them.
No.
Okay. So one other thing, Jeff, just to make sure to firm this up, would you notify Dylan that what we're planning on voting on this, and have him make sure everything's legally, that doing this, we're not going to trip some kind of a wire. So.
Yes.
Now, I am confused though. Are we going to join forces with any other district in paying?
Well, we're asking them if they want to join us, but initially I believe it would just be us.
With that, yeah, that's where I asked Director Morgan, it's like the chicken or the egg. And she's, I guess, saying the chicken, and then we'll,
I think they're going to, I mean, I think if we take a step out in faith, that others may join us. But I think, like a lot of people, they don't want to be the lead. They don't want to speculate.
So that would be the fourth point of the fourth thing on the committee, would be to solicit alliance or coalition.
I would rather let the lobbyists do that. Again, I don't want to be a lobbyist. So I don't want to be doing this even part-time, trying to build a coalition.
Are you saying the lobbyists contact the other water departments?
So it depends on, so that is, again, Amy does that, Mark has not. So if you want that, she would roll that into her fee, Mark does not, but he could if we'd ask him to.
But see, here's my thinking. If I'm them and I pursue the other people, I'm pursuing them at full price.
No, they have both said that it will be economies of scale. They both mark it down, and they both have their clients like that. Mark with his hospitals, and I can't remember what Amy has.
So like, I'll make this up, and I don't know, but like, so say we got 3 people to join us. Instead of us paying 30, we might only have to pay 20 or 15 or something.
Yes, there'd be a bottom price for everybody, and then everybody would have to,
right,
contribute that.
Okay.
Yes, and I don't have the mechanism for that specifically because we don't have any partners, but they have both. Everybody.
Well, I just didn't know, because if I went out on my own soliciting people, I would expect to get full price.
No, well, because the conversation is you'll meet them along the way, and if they would like to join, then that would be it. Yeah.
And this would be a 1-year contract with whoever this is.
Right. With a 30-day, with the one group, a 30-day notice to cancel.
And we could ask for the other one as well. I just didn't ask.
It all needs to be in a statement or statement of work.
Yeah. Plus, it will expand, because when you talk to a lot of people out there for sustainable resources, like I have a good friend who's a manager for CDOT, and CDOT's out of water too. They use a lot of water for road construction, so they're out of water. So sustainability is tough on everybody.
Okay. Any further things for the agenda? I'm going to close that out. I'd like to motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second it.
We have a second. Discussion. No discussion. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All 5 ayes. We are now adjourned at 8:38.
Nice.
So our note taker is going to review the